Over many years, as I said, hundreds of children have fallen victim to child predators wrapped in the authority and the faith of those that they serve.
Good afternoon. Pennsylvania Attorney General Kathleen Kane laying out the case against the Altoona-Johnstown Catholic Diocese. Kane saying it was systematic, designed to protect priests and religious leaders who abused children in the diocese for decades. A statewide grand jury report released today contains such graphic descriptions of abuse. We cannot share some of it with you on television, but you can read it for yourself. It is in its entirety on our website, WJACTV.com.
Now, we want to begin our special coverage of that report with this. There is no allegation, not a single one, against any member of the clergy currently serving at any of the diocese's 89 parishes. Kathleen Kane praised the efforts of the current bishop, the Reverend Mark Barczak, for his cooperation with law enforcement in this investigation. There is nothing to suggest that Bishop Barczak had any role in what authorities say was a cover-up of the abuse.
Now, the grand jury report does detail abuse allegations against at least 50 priest and religious leaders. The abuse dates back to the early 1960s. In graphic detail, the grand jury lays out allegations of horrific abuse of children. And in perhaps the most startling revelation, the report details a secret diocesan fund that paid victims a specific amount for certain acts of sexual abuse. The grand jury charges the cover-up of abuse cases was orchestrated by former bishops James Hogan and Joseph Adamet. The report includes this: these men took actions that further endangered children as they placed their desire to avoid public scandal over the well-being of innocent children. Following the release of the grand jury report, the Most Reverend Mark Barczak, the current bishop of the Altoona-Johnstown Diocese, released a statement in which he said, "This is a painful and difficult time in our diocesan church. I deeply regret any harm that has come to children, and I urge the faithful to join me in praying for all victims of abuse." Now, diocesan spokesman Tony DeGaulle just called our newsroom and said the bishop had no advance notice of today's report, and that, in fact, when the report was released, the bishop was out of town.
Now, during the announcement today, State Attorney General Kathleen Kane said a hotline is set up for anyone who is a victim of sexual abuse or anyone who may have information in regards to this ongoing investigation. The numbers on your screen, that hotline, 1-888-538-8541. Again, that's 888-538-8541. The Attorney General says that hotline will be answered up until 9 p.m. and that all voicemail messages will be returned. We'll have that number scrolling along the bottom of your screen throughout our newscast tonight.
The entire investigation unveiled today began in Cambria County with allegations of sexual abuse stemming from a Catholic high school in Johnstown.
Kane says the Cambria County District Attorney was concerned that officials from that school, Bishop McCord Catholic High School, as well as the Johnstown Police Department and the diocese failed to report child abuse at the hands of Brother Stephen Baker, a former coach and athletic trainer accused of molesting students in the 90s. Maria Miller has been covering that story for years, and she's live with much more. Maria?
Jen, Brother Baker is not named in that report as one of those alleged abusers, but it's not clear if that's because he wasn't an actual priest, if it's because he worked for an order outside of the diocese, or if it's because he's deceased. But according to Kathleen Kane today, he may be the basis for this investigation. His alleged victims coming forward and the Cambria County District Attorney turning that case over to the AG's office seems to be the whole reason why this investigation started.
I knew this was going to be a multi-county investigation.
It was 2014, after the news of settlements at a school in Ohio, that former Bishop McCord Catholic High School students came forward alleging abuse at the hands of Brother Stephen Baker. He was a Franciscan friar who served as an athletic trainer and coach at the Johnstown School in the 90s.
That investigation was initiated upon a referral by the District Attorney of Cambria County, Kelly Callahan, to the Office of Attorney General.
It was hard for me to know where it would go, but what I did know is I did not have the manpower or the resources here in Cambria County to take on a grand jury investigation.
But Callahan told us Tuesday Brother Baker wasn't the first referral of clergy sex abuse in Cambria County that she made. She says she brought another name forward 3 years before.
The referral was on the allegations that came forward about Father Kaharchik.
Those allegations were never revealed in detail, but the diocese suspended Kuharczyk 1 year later while he was serving at St. Catherine of Siena Parish in Mount Union. Kuharczyk is listed as one of the 50 or so priests and religious leaders in the document released by Kane on Tuesday.
Everything in the grand jury is secret, so it's not like we get updated reports. I'm learning of the findings of this investigation like you today.
Callahan says it was the same procedure in 2014 when she became aware of the allegations against Baker. But until Tuesday, she says she didn't know what would happen when the investigation left her office.
I feel today very relieved that I made a decision to carry on the Brother Baker matter. Because of his death, there was that quandary we were in because we couldn't really do anything about his conduct at that point. He was dead. We knew we couldn't charge him. But I just did not feel right in my heart letting that go. You know, seeing the extent of the damage that was done in Cambria County, I had no way to know that at the point that I referred this. No way to know that there was that much abuse going on for that many years.
Callahan is a practicing Catholic herself, and in fact, she says the reason why she couldn't pursue charges against Kuharczyk in the first place is because he was her priest. Today, she told us she is furious to learn everything that came out in this report, and she says the changes have to be made in the diocese concerning child sex abuse and how it's reported. But she said she can also already see a change, saying that Bishop Mark Barczyk was very involved with discussions involving Kuharczyk and was the one who put him on leave. Reporting live in Cambria County, Maria Miller, 6 News.
And again, these allegations against the Altoona-Johnstown Catholic Diocese are widespread.
That report states tens of thousands of secret archives were uncovered. There are allegations of money paid to victims for their silence. 6 News Investigates Cody Leibowitz dug into the grand jury report today, a disturbing report.
Right, Marty and Jen, right away, that grand jury report by Attorney General Kathleen Kane dives into the secret archive of files. As you said, tens of thousands of documents locked away with only the bishops having access to these files. It's like an attorney-client privilege for the church. Within these secret files, the grand jury report says there are allegations of a payout system to the victims for the purchase of their silence, the money allegedly doled out in the thousands depending on the level of the abuse. A 147-page grand jury report shows the in-depth nature of the investigation into allegations of child sexual abuse at the Diocese of Altoona-Johnstown. With the reported abuse came reported payments to victims directly from the Diocese of Altoona-Johnstown Bishop.
Behind closed doors, Bishop Adamek took steps that showed the widespread nature of the problem.
According to Attorney General Kathleen Kane, Bishop Joseph Adamek allegedly created a payout chart. The report describes this as a guide used to direct the judgments of the diocese in the payment of claims and the purchase of silence.
He had certain categories for levels of abuse that he and he alone decided.
Kane says there were 4 levels of payments. Above the clothing fondling is level 1 with a payment range of $10,000 to $25,000. Level 2, masturbation, paying victims $15,000 to $40,000. Oral sex, level 3. The bishop would reportedly pay victims of child sex abuse $25,000 to $75,000. And level 4, intercourse, $50,000 to $175,000.
The chart is noted by the bishop with factors to consider in evaluating a range. Those factors are the number of occurrences, as if one wasn't enough, duration of abuse over time, the age of the victim, the use of alcohol or drugs, apparent effect of abuse on the victims, their psychosis, and other aggravating circumstances. The grand jury noted the cold bureaucracy of this chart.
What led Kane to the report? George Foster, who the report describes as a layperson. According to the report, special agents of the Office of Attorney General removed more than 115,000 documents from the diocese on August 7th of last year. Those documents, the report says, include secret archives containing files against priests accused of sexual misconduct. Investigators also reportedly uncovered a secret archive of files containing confidential litigation, accusations of institutional crisis of child sexual abuse. Now the AP reached out to Bishop Adamek's lawyer. He declined comment.
Cody, thanks.
Cody, thanks. Even though the grand jury reviewed more than 200 exhibits and created thousands of pages of transcribed testimony, Kane says none of the alleged criminal acts can be prosecuted.
Some abusers have died. Statutes of limitations have run their course, meaning there is legally too much time between the alleged abuse and now, or victims are too traumatized to testify. But one state lawmaker is hoping he can change that law, and Lauren Hensley live tonight with more on that. Lauren?
Yeah, Marty, Jen, it's been pretty quiet outside of the diocese, but where it's not quiet in Harrisburg. According to State Representative Mark Rossi, this story is personal. He's a survivor of sexual abuse, and he says it happened at the hands of a priest. Now he's on a mission to change the law to help get justice for these victims. It's a story State Representative Mark Rossi of Berks County knows all too well. He lived his own childhood nightmare when he was sexually abused at the hands of a priest back in 1983.
I couldn't speak about it before I was 39, for God's sake.
Under the law at that time, Rossi only had 5 years to come forward for a criminal case and 2 years for a civil case. Now victims have 50 years for a criminal and 30 years for a civil. But for the hundreds of alleged victims interviewed by this grand jury, they're out of time. Kane says none of the alleged criminal acts can be prosecuted.
To me, I would love to see people get outraged, to the point where legislators have to finally act.
For years, Rossi says he's been supporting legislation that would get rid of the statute of limitations. It would allow past victims up to the age of 50 to press criminal charges and create a 2-year window for civil suits. But it keeps getting shot down.
And I don't know how much information, I don't know how many grand jury testimonies, I don't know how many sandusties we need before this legislature would ever take action. They've continually protected pedophiles, and we have let them off the hook for it.
We contacted other area legislators to see how they feel about Rossi's proposal. State Representative John McGinnis declined an on-camera interview, but said over the phone he was wary about doing away with the statute of limitations. He said he did want to review the grand jury report before issuing a formal statement. He said he plans on releasing one in the upcoming days. Still, attorney Kathleen Kane is calling this an open investigation. Rossi says if you support his idea, you need to reach out to your local legislator and put some pressure on them to support his bill. And he says if you're a survivor and you're listening to this, you're not alone. His office is always available for any survivors. And of course, you can call that number we've been running throughout our newscast all this evening. Reporting live in Altoona, Lauren Hensley, 6 News.
We reached out to the Survivors Network of those abused by priests. The executive director released this statement after hearing of the grand jury report. He says in part, this is a no-brainer. Pennsylvania lawmakers should stop being cowed or fooled by slick Catholic lobbyists. Every Pennsylvania parent will prod lawmakers to fix the state's predator-friendly statutes of limitations.
One of the people mentioned in the grand jury report is George Foster.
Now, he's a local businessman who made it his mission to bring years of alleged abuse to light, and Jillian Hartman sat down with Foster today and has his story. Jillian?
Marty and Jen, Foster says his interest in tracking reports in churches' abuse in our area all started when victims turned to him, telling him their stories.
Enough is enough.
George Foster, a Catholic businessman from Johnstown, took it upon himself to help several victims who were sexually abused by priests.
Someone walked into my office and said, "Can I talk to you?" And I said, "Of course." And they related the story to me of how they were abused as a child and how they had gone to the diocese and nothing was done. And I asked them why they had come to me, and they said, "Well, because you're not afraid of the diocese."
In the meantime, several other victims and their families started reaching out to Foster for the same reason.
As I tell people, this was God's will. He wanted me to get involved.
Foster began to ask questions and gather information. After a while, a list grew with people who were involved.
The problem in the diocese, so you know, is not just child molestation, it's sexual immorality. It's the whole picture.
Foster traced back decades of priests and asked how this had been so hush-hush.
calling police or anybody that said so-and-so knew about this, I'd call them up, and a lot of times the victims would say, yes, I got paid $30,000 to keep quiet.
As families and victims look for restitution, Foster says he presented all this information to Bishop Hogan, the bishop at the time.
There's enough evidence here that these men should be removed. And I got the impression that nothing was going to be done.
Foster went on to say that anything can be forgiven, that's up to God. Coming up at 6, how he reacted on today's announcement. We'll have more on that. Reporting live in the newsroom, Jillian Hartman, 6 News.
Well, as you can imagine, the investigation has created a lot of attention on social media.
Abby Way has more now on what people are saying online. Abby?
Marty, Jen, people online are expressing that they are shocked and saddened to hear about something like this happening in our area. Many of them are discussing the fact that nobody can be charged in this case because of the Statute of Limitations. Attorney General Kathleen Kane expressed her feelings on this issue during a press conference early today, and she made it very clear that she thinks it's time for a change. This is part of what she said. She said victims need to be heard. Abolishing the statute would allow these predators to be accountable until the last day of their lives because these victims live with it every day of their lives. Now, a lot of people are also talking about this on our Facebook page, discussing this issue. That's also our poll question today. We want to know, do you think lawmakers should lift the statute of limitations for sexual offenses against minors? You can answer this question on our website at WJACTV.com, and you can also join the conversation over on our Facebook page. And again, officials are urging anyone with information regarding this investigation to call this emergency hotline number. The number is 888-538-8541. This is also posted on our website. Anybody with information is being urged to call. Back to you.
Abby, thanks. Coming up next on 6 News, the biggest day so far in the race for the White House, Super Tuesday.
And a teen accused in a shooting at an Ohio school in court. Now the school's working to make its students feel safe.
Tracking high winds, rain showers, snow showers, even some accumulating snow. Lots to talk about in your forecast. I'll have more coming up.
Back to our top story of this day, State Attorney General Kathleen Kane laid out a case against the Altoona-Johnstown Catholic Diocese following a statewide grand jury report that was released today. That report containing graphic information about child sexual abuse. The report shows at least 50 priests and religious leaders were involved. The allegations go back at least 40 years. It lists, as we mentioned, what it calls horrific cases of child abuse. And it also says the diocese would use what it calls a secret fund to pay victims of abuse. The grand jury charges the cover-up of abuse cases was orchestrated by former bishops James Hogan and Joseph Adamek. The report includes this. These men took actions that further endangered children as they placed their desire to avoid public scandal over the well-being of innocent children. After our report on the alleged payout system aired, lawyers for Bishop Joseph Adamek sent 6 News a statement that reads in part, Bishop Adamek expresses his deepest sympathies to all victims of abuse and deeply regrets any harm that has come to children who were victimized. This is a position contrary to the tenor of the grand jury report that he adhered to while in office, and his full historical record while bishop of the diocese reflects it. The bishop's full record includes his having suspended a number of priests from public ministry and having requested laization of others. We'll have more on the bishop on 6 News at 6. Now, 8 of the priests served in churches across Center County, according to the Attorney General.
Aaron Calandra is live in State College with more on that information. Aaron?
Marty, Jen, I'm here in front of Our Lady Victory Church here in State College. This is where officials say 4 of those priests served over years. We're talking decades, from the 1950s through 2004. The other 4 priests you mentioned, they were in Phillipsburg, Bellefonte, and Penns Valley.
It's very surprising and it's kind of disturbing.
The State College community is reacting, hearing that 8 priests who served in Center County are accused of sexually abusing young boys. Simon Cantu attended service at Our Lady of Victory in State College.
We moved here from our parish near Philadelphia.
He says he's never heard of abuse at this church, but longtime resident Wendy Williams says rumors were flying back in the 70s and 80s.
Saddened, but maybe not surprised.
Father Martin Single is one of those accused. He served at OLV from 78 until 81.
1979, Father Single met his 15-year-old victim while the boy served as an altar boy at Our Lady of Victory in State College. Years later, after undergoing counseling, the victim met with Bishop Adamek in 2002 and explained what occurred. And the bishop vowed he would take action.
Officials say Single had rehabilitation treatment for a month, then returned to full-time ministry in Johnstown. That's where he was still serving until October of last year when the church suspended him. In another case, Father Dennis Coleman is accused of abusing a 10-year-old Bellefonte boy. Coleman served at St. John's Church from 1975 until 79. In this case, according to the Attorney General's report, Coleman invited young boys to stay overnight at the rectory. A 10-year-old boy told officials that's when Coleman hypnotized him. When he fell asleep, he says he woke up to Coleman rubbing his genitals on his bare feet. Coleman died in 2014. It's a similar story for the other 6 priests. The victims, all boys ranging in age from 10 to 16 years old.
As a Catholic, as a Christian, I think it's really disappointing to hear about these kinds of things happening. But, I hope that those who should be held accountable are held accountable.
I went through the Attorney General's report, all 170 plus pages, and I broke down a list of the priests who worked here in Center County at all the different churches and the years that they were here in Center County. You can find the report on our website at WJACTV.com, and you can find this list on my Facebook page. Live in State College, Erin Calandra, 6 News.